Two moons hung in a sky that had only ever known one, casting silver fire over the forest below. And it was under that impossible light that the Beta King fell to his knees before a woman who wasn't human at all, her skin glowing like twilight, her eyes holding entire constellations. He thought fate had finally given him a mate, never knowing she was already bound by soul and starlight to another. Across the cosmos, the Astral Emperor felt her slip from his realm and followed the golden thread of their eternal bond, straight toward the world and the Wolf King, who dared to claim his bride. Welcome back to my channel, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy the story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The night Celine fell from the stars, she told herself it was strategy. Not panic. Not desperation. Certainly not the wild, gasping terror of a woman who had just discovered that her soul had been permanently stitched to a man she barely knew, a man whose eyes held the weight of 10,000 years, whose voice could rearrange constellations, and whose idea of courtship apparently involved rewriting the gravitational pull of her home realm so that every celestial body now orbited slightly closer to his throne room. For convenience, he had explained, as if relocating moons was a minor adjustment. So you never feel far from me. Celine had smiled politely, excused herself to the balcony, and promptly torn a hole through the fabric of reality. Now she was falling. Wind screamed past her ears, though it was not truly wind, but the friction of dimensions peeling away as she plummeted through layers of existence like a stone dropped through water. Her gown, crimson silk embroidered with moon phases and constellation maps older than mortal memory, billowed behind her in a river of fabric and starlight. The threads woven into its hem had been spun from the dying breath of a supernova. Her mother had spent 3 centuries crafting it for her coronation. Celine wondered, briefly, if it would survive the landing. She wondered if she would survive the landing. The mortal realm rushed up to meet her, a tapestry of green and brown and silver, forests and mountains and rivers that had never known the touch of celestial light. It was beautiful in the way simple things are beautiful, honest, unpolished, blissfully unaware of its own insignificance in the grand cosmic order. Celine hit the ground in a clearing ringed by ancient oaks, and the impact sent a shockwave of stardust rippling outward in a perfect circle. Flowers bloomed where the dust settled. Grass turned silver. A nearby stream began flowing backward for approximately 30 seconds before remembering which direction it was supposed to go. She lay there for a long moment, breathing. Just breathing. The air tasted different here. Thicker. Earthier. It carried the scent of pine and damp soil and something she could not name, something wild and warm that made her chest ache with a longing she did not understand. Above her, 2 moons hung in the sky. Celine frowned. That was wrong. This realm was supposed to have only 1 moon, a pale, pockmarked thing that mortal poets wrote mediocre verses about. She had studied the charts. She had memorized the astronomical configurations. 1 moon. 1 sun. 1 unremarkable little world spinning in the unfashionable outer arm of a spiral galaxy. But there were 2 moons now, hanging side by side like twin eyes watching her from the heavens. Her stomach dropped. He had followed her. Not physically, not yet. But Kale, the Astral Emperor, had done something far more unsettling. He had brought his moons. His personal moons, the ones that orbited his palace, the ones that had witnessed every coronation and conquest and quiet moment of his eternal reign. He had dragged them across the cosmos and hung them in this mortal sky like a message written in celestial bodies. I see you. I will find you. You cannot hide from me in any realm. Celine pushed herself upright, dirt and stardust clinging to her palms, and laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that startled a flock of birds from the nearby trees. Dramatic, she whispered to the sky. Utterly, insufferably dramatic. But her hands were shaking. She had known, of course, that running would not be simple. The astral thread that bound her to Kale was not a mere magical contract or political arrangement. It was something far older, far deeper, a connection woven into the very fabric of existence during her coronation ritual, when the cosmic energies of her ascension had accidentally tangled with his presence in the astral plane. An accident. That was what her mother's advisors had called it, their faces carefully neutral as they explained that the princess of the celestial realm was now permanently soul-bound to the most powerful being in the known universe. These things happen, the High Oracle had said, as if describing a minor inconvenience rather than the complete erasure of Celine's future autonomy. The Emperor is pleased. Pleased. Kale had been more than pleased. He had arrived at her coronation ceremony within hours of the binding, stepping through a rift in space with the casual elegance of a man entering his own throne room. His silver-white hair had fallen past his shoulders like moonlight given form. His armor had shimmered with embedded stars, a constellation mapped across his chest. And his eyes, ancient, knowing, hungry, had found hers across the crowded ballroom with the precision of a predator locating prey. "My bride," he had said, and the words had echoed through every molecule of her being. She had not spoken to him directly that night. She had not needed to. The bond pulsed between them like a second heartbeat, feeding her impressions of his emotions whether she wanted them or not. Satisfaction, possessiveness, and beneath it all, a loneliness so vast and deep that she had nearly drowned in it. 10,000 years. He had been alone for 10,000 years, ruling an empire that spanned galaxies, watching civilizations rise and fall like waves against an eternal shore. And now, finally, the cosmos had given him a companion. A match. A soul bound to his across the fabric of existence itself. He did not seem to care that she had not chosen this. He did not seem to understand that choice mattered. And so Celine had run, not because she hated him, but because she needed to breathe. She needed space that was truly hers, air that did not taste of his presence, a sky that did not bend to his will. She had hoped, foolishly, that she might find that space on Earth. But the moons above her said otherwise. Celine climbed to her feet, brushing dirt from her gown, and surveyed her surroundings. The clearing was peaceful despite her dramatic entrance. The oaks stood like ancient sentinels, their branches heavy with late summer leaves. A stream murmured somewhere nearby, and the air hummed with the small sounds of nocturnal creatures going about their business, creatures who had apparently decided that a glowing woman falling from the sky was not worth interrupting their evening routines. She needed to move. Needed to find shelter, find a way to disguise herself, find some corner of this world where she could simply exist without the weight of cosmic destiny pressing down on her shoulders. She took one step toward the tree line. And that was when she felt it. A presence. Not Kale. The astral thread would have screamed if he were physically near. This was something else. Something earthly, primal, ancient in a different way. It prowled at the edges of the clearing, watching her from shadows that seemed to breathe. Celine's power flared instinctively, violet light rippling across her skin, but she forced it down. She was trying to hide, she reminded herself. Announcing her presence with a celestial light show would rather defeat the purpose. "I know you're there," she said, keeping her voice steady. "You might as well show yourself." Silence. Then the shadows moved. A man stepped into the clearing, though man felt like an inadequate word for the creature before her. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in dark leather that seemed designed for both combat and dramatic forest appearances. His hair was dark and slightly disheveled, as if he had been running. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass. And his eyes. His eyes were the color of aged whiskey, and they were fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "You're glowing," he said. Celine glanced down at herself. She was, in fact, still glowing, a faint violet luminescence that she had forgotten to suppress in the chaos of her arrival. "Astute observation," she replied. "Do you always state the obvious, or is this a special occasion?" The man's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "I'm Rowan," he said. "Beta King of the Eastern Wolf Pack." He paused, something shifting in his expression, something that looked almost like pain. "And you're..." He did not finish the sentence. Instead, he pressed a hand to his chest, his breath catching, his whiskey-dark eyes widening with what looked horrifyingly like recognition. "No," Celine said quickly, taking a step back. "Whatever you're about to say, no." "Mate," Rowan breathed, the word torn from him like a confession. "You're my mate." Celine stared at him. Then she laughed, a genuine laugh this time, edged with hysteria but real nonetheless. "Oh, this is perfect," she said, pressing her fingers to her temples. "This is absolutely perfect. I flee one cosmic bond only to stumble directly into another. The universe has a truly spectacular sense of humor." Rowan shook his head slowly, still staring at her like she was the answer to a question he had spent his entire life asking. "This isn't a joke. The bond, I can feel it. My wolf can feel it. I'm already bound to someone else," Celine interrupted, her voice sharper than she intended. "An emperor, actually. Of the astral variety. Very powerful. Very possessive. Very much the reason I am currently standing in a forest on a planet I have never visited, covered in dirt and stardust and seriously reconsidering my life choices." Rowan's expression flickered. "You're married. Bound. Not married. There's a difference, though I suspect he would disagree. But the mate bond should not exist," Celine finished. "And yet here we are." She gestured vaguely at the space between them, where she could now feel it, a thread of connection, warm and golden and entirely different from the silver-cold pull of her bond with Kale. This one felt like sunlight on skin, like coming home after a long journey, like something she might have chosen if she had ever been given the chance to choose. She hated it. She hated it because it felt good, and good things in her life had a tendency to come with invisible chains attached. Rowan took a step closer, and Celine held her ground, refusing to retreat again. He moved like a predator, fluid, controlled, every muscle coiled with barely restrained power. But there was something gentle in the way he approached her, something almost reverent, as if he were afraid she might shatter if he moved too quickly. "I've waited 200 years for this," he said quietly. "For you." I had started to believe. I had accepted that perhaps I was not meant to have a mate. That I would lead my pack alone, die alone, fade into whatever comes after without ever knowing what it felt like to be truly seen. His voice cracked on the last word, and Celine felt something in her chest crack with it. "And now you're here," Rowan continued, "and you're telling me you belong to someone else. That the bond one feel, the bond my wolf is howling for, is some kind of cosmic mistake." "I'm telling you the truth," Celine said, but her voice had lost its edge. "I don't know why the mate bond activated between us. It shouldn't be possible. I'm not of this world. I'm not even technically mortal." Rowan's jaw tightened. Bonds don't lie. Bonds can be accidents. She thought of Kale, of the astral thread that had snapped into place during her coronation. "Trust me. I have experience." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The forest held its breath around them. The twin moons cast silver light through the canopy, painting strange shadows on the ground between their feet. Then Rowan did something unexpected. He stepped back. "You're running from someone," he said. It was not a question. "Someone powerful enough to hang moons in a foreign sky." Celine nodded slowly. "The Astral Emperor. My bondmate. He'll find me eventually. The thread connecting us, it spans dimensions. He's probably already tracing it. Then you need somewhere to hide." She blinked. "I what?" Rowan's expression hardened into something like determination. "My territory is warded. Protected by magic older than the pack itself. If you need time, if you need space, I can offer you that." "Why?" The word escaped before she could stop it. "You don't know me. You owe me nothing. You're my mate. I just told you. I know what you told me." Rowan cut her off, his voice firm but not unkind. "And I know the bond between us might be an accident, a mistake, a cosmic joke at both our expenses. But I also know that you're standing in my forest, clearly exhausted, clearly frightened, and clearly in need of help." He paused, his whiskey eyes searching her face. "My wolf wants to protect you. And for once, I'm inclined to agree with him." Celine studied him, this strange mortal king who looked at her like she was something precious rather than something to be possessed. There was no demand in his gaze. No expectation. Just an offer, extended freely, with no strings visible. She had never been offered anything without strings. "If I come with you," she said carefully, "you need to understand something. I am not choosing you. I am not accepting the mate bond. I am simply accepting shelter." Rowan nodded. "Understood. And when the Emperor comes, we'll deal with that when it happens." Celine almost laughed again. Deal with it. As if Kale were a minor inconvenience rather than a being who could unmake this entire planet with a thought. But she was tired. So desperately, bone-achingly tired. And the bond between her and this Wolf King, this accident, this impossibility, pulsed with warmth that made her want to weep. "Fine," she said. "Take me somewhere I can rest. And perhaps find me something to wear that isn't covered in stardust." Rowan's lips curved into a small, genuine smile, the first she had seen from him. It transformed his face, softening the sharp edges, making him look almost boyish despite the centuries in his eyes. "I think I can manage that," he said. He turned toward the tree line, and Celine followed, her celestial gown trailing behind her like a river of captured starlight. Above them, the twin moons watched. And somewhere across the cosmos, an emperor opened his eyes. The pack's stronghold was not what Celine had expected. She had imagined something primitive, caves, perhaps, or rough wooden structures thrown together by creatures more comfortable in fur than flesh. Instead, Rowan led her through miles of moonlit forest to a fortress built into the mountainside itself, its stone walls carved with symbols that hummed with ancient power. Torches lined the pathway, their flames burning an unusual shade of blue, and as they approached the massive iron gates, Celine felt the wards ripple against her skin like cool water. "Old magic," she murmured, impressed despite herself. "Very old." Rowan glanced back at her. "The first Alpha made a pact with the mountain spirits 3,000 years ago. They protect us. In return, we protect the land. A fair bargain. The best ones usually are." The gates swung open without a sound, and Celine found herself walking through courtyards lit by more of those strange blue flames, past stone buildings that seemed to grow organically from the rock, past wolves in both human and animal form who stopped whatever they were doing to stare at her with undisguised curiosity. She was still glowing. She really needed to do something about that. "Word travels fast," Rowan said, noting her discomfort. "By morning, everyone will know I returned with a celestial woman who fell from the sky." "Wonderful. I was hoping for discretion. You landed in a circle of silver flowers and reversed a stream. Discretion may have left the table." Celine shot him a look, and Rowan's lips twitched again, that almost smile she was beginning to recognize. He led her to a tower at the far end of the compound, its windows dark, its stones older than the rest of the fortress. "Guest quarters," he explained, pushing open the heavy wooden door. "Private. Warded separately from the main compound. No one will disturb you here unless you wish it." The interior was simple but comfortable, a large bed draped in furs, a fireplace already crackling with warmth, a wooden tub in the corner that steamed invitingly. Someone had laid out fresh clothing on the bed, a simple dress of deep blue wool. Nothing like her celestial gown, but clean and warm and blessedly normal. "How did you?" Celine started. "I sent word ahead." Rowan tapped his temple. "Pack bond. Useful for logistics." She turned to face him, this Wolf King who had offered her shelter without demanding anything in return. He stood in the doorway, one hand braced against the frame, his broad shoulders nearly filling the space. The blue torchlight caught the planes of his face, casting shadows that made him look both dangerous and unbearably tired. "Thank you," she said. The words felt strange on her tongue, inadequate for what he had given her, but she did not know what else to say. Rowan nodded once. "Rest. We'll talk more in the morning." He turned to leave. "Rowan." He paused, looking back over his shoulder. Celine hesitated. She should let him go. Should maintain the distance she had insisted upon. But something in her chest, some traitorous, exhausted part of her that craved connection, pushed words past her lips before she could stop them. "The mate bond," she said quietly. "What does it feel like?" "For you." Rowan was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough, as if the words cost him something to release. Like finding a fire after walking through snow for 200 years. He paused, his whiskey eyes dark with something she could not name. Like finally understanding why I kept walking. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, and Celine was left standing in the center of the room with her heart beating far too fast and her carefully constructed walls trembling at their foundations. She did not sleep that night. 3 days passed. 3 days of hiding in the Wolf King's territory, wearing borrowed dresses and eating food prepared by pack members who watched her with a mixture of awe and suspicion. 3 days of feeling the astral thread pulse in her chest like a warning, growing stronger each hour, telling her that Kale was getting closer. 3 days of trying very hard not to think about the way Rowan looked at her. He kept his distance as promised. He did not push, did not demand, did not even bring up the mate bond again. Instead, he simply appeared. At meals, sitting across from her with quiet conversation about pack politics and territorial disputes. In the evenings, walking the ramparts when she could not sleep, always a respectful distance away, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence like a banked fire. On the third morning, Celine found him in the training yard. She had woken before dawn, restless and anxious, and had wandered the fortress grounds in search of distraction. The training yard was empty except for Rowan, who stood shirtless in the pale morning light, a sword in each hand, moving through combat forms with the fluid precision of someone who had spent centuries perfecting violence. Celine stopped at the edge of the yard, transfixed. He was beautiful. She hated to admit it, but there was no other word. His body was a map of battles survived, scars crossing his chest and shoulders, muscles shifting beneath skin that gleamed with sweat. He moved like water, like shadow, like something that belonged to the wild places of the world. And then he turned and caught her watching, and Celine felt heat rise to her cheeks for the first time in centuries. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, lowering the swords. "Your wards hum," she lied. "It's distracting." Rowan's eyebrow rose, but he did not call her on it. Instead, he set the swords aside and reached for a cloth to wipe his face, giving her an unobstructed view of the way his muscles moved beneath his skin. She looked away, fixed her gaze on the mountains, reminded herself firmly that she was bound to an emperor who could atomize this entire stronghold with a thought. "You're tense," Rowan observed. "More than usual." "He's getting closer." Celine wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the morning sun. "I can feel him through the thread." "Another day. Maybe 2. Rowan was quiet for a moment. "Then, what will you do?" "I don't know." The admission scraped her throat raw. "I don't know what to do. I don't know what I want." "I don't," she broke off, pressing her palms to her eyes. "I have never been allowed to want anything. My entire existence has been duty and destiny and choices made for me by forces beyond my control. And now I have 2 bonds pulling me in opposite directions, and I do not know how to." "Celine." His voice was closer now. She lowered her hands and found him standing before her, near enough that she could smell him, pine and wood smoke, and something wild beneath, something that made her wolfless heart howl in recognition. "Look at me," he said softly. She did. His whiskey eyes were warm, patient, holding none of the demands she had come to expect from powerful men. "Whatever you choose," Rowan said, "whatever happens when he arrives, I need you to know something." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed his fingers against her wrist. Just that. Just a whisper of contact. But the mate bond sang at the touch, and Celine's breath caught like she had been struck. "I will not fight for you like you are a prize to be won," he continued, his voice low and rough. "I will not claim you like you are territory to be conquered. But I will stand beside you if you let me. Not because the bond demands it. Because I choose to." His thumb traced a small circle on the inside of her wrist, and Celine felt the touch echo through every nerve in her body. "That's all I can offer," Rowan said. "The choice. Always the choice." Celine stared at him, this impossible man who spoke of choice like it was sacred, who touched her like she was something precious rather than something owed. "Why?" she whispered. Why would you want someone who cannot promise you anything? Who may leave the moment her other bondmate arrives? Rowan's smile was sad and soft and devastating. Because 200 years of loneliness taught me that some things are worth wanting, even if you never get to keep them. He released her wrist and stepped back, the distance between them suddenly feeling like a canyon. The bond will always be there, he said. But I will never use it against you. Whatever you decide, Celine, I will respect it. He turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the training yard with her wrist burning where he had touched her and her heart doing things she had specifically forbidden it to do. She watched him go and thought about choices. About what it meant to be wanted rather than claimed. About the difference between a bond that demanded and one that offered. And she wondered, for the first time, what she might choose if she were truly free to choose anything at all. That evening, Celine requested a walk. Rowan accompanied her, not because she asked, but because she did not ask him not to. They wandered beyond the fortress walls, into the forest that sprawled across his territory like a living thing. The twin moons hung overhead, constant reminders of the Emperor who hunted her, but beneath the canopy their light filtered into something softer, gentler, almost kind. Tell me about your realm, Rowan said as they walked. The Celestial Kingdom. What is it like? Celine considered the question. Beautiful, she said eventually. Cold. Everything is light and crystal and perfect geometry. The palaces float above clouds of stardust. The gardens bloom with flowers that sing. She paused. It sounds lovely when I describe it. I'm not sure why it never felt that way. Perhaps because a gilded cage is still a cage. She glanced at him sharply, but there was no judgment in his expression. Only understanding. I was raised to be a princess, Celine said quietly. Every moment choreographed. Every choice made by advisors and oracles and the weight of tradition. I never questioned it, not really, until the day I was told my soul now belonged to someone I had never met. She laughed bitterly. The Astral Emperor. Ruler of galaxies. My mother wept with joy when she heard. Do you know what she said to me? Rowan shook his head. She said, finally, our bloodline will mean something. Celine's voice hardened. Not, are you happy? Not, is this what you want? Just, finally. As if my entire existence had been a waiting room, and Kale was the destination I had been traveling toward all along. And the Emperor himself? What is he like? Celine was quiet for a long moment, sorting through impressions and memories and the constant pulse of the thread in her chest. He is not cruel, she said finally. That is what makes it so complicated. He genuinely believes he loves me. He has waited 10,000 years for a companion, and now that the cosmos has given him one, he cannot fathom why I would run. She sighed. To him, the bond is a gift. A blessing. He does not understand that a gift you cannot refuse is not a gift at all. They had reached a small clearing, a stream cutting through its center, the water silver in the moonlight. Rowan stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression thoughtful. When he comes, he said slowly, will you go with him? Celine met his eyes. I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one I have. Rowan nodded, accepting this. Then he surprised her by settling onto a fallen log beside the stream, patting the space next to him in invitation. Celine hesitated only a moment before sitting beside him. Their shoulders nearly touched. She could feel the heat of him, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the pull of the mate bond singing between them like a half-remembered melody. Can I tell you something? Rowan asked, staring at the water. You've been remarkably forthcoming so far. I don't see why you would stop now. He huffed a quiet laugh. Fair point. He was silent for a moment, gathering his thoughts. I wasn't always Beta King. For the first century of my life, I was nothing, a packless wolf, wandering between territories, belonging nowhere. I had no family, no purpose. I survived, but I didn't live. Celine watched his profile, the way the moonlight caught the sharp angles of his jaw, the shadows pooling in the hollow of his throat. Then I found this pack, Rowan continued. Or rather, they found me. The old alpha, Theron, he saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. He took me in, trained me, made me his second. His voice softened. Made me believe I was worth something. What happened to him? War. A rival pack attacked. Theron died defending the stronghold. Rowan's joy tightened. I became alpha that night. Not because I wanted power, but because there was no one else. Because the pack needed someone to hold them together while they grieved. You've been leading ever since? 200 years. He turned to look at her, and the weight of those years lived in his eyes. 200 years of putting the pack first, of being strong when I wanted to break, of watching everyone around me find their mates, build their families, while I stayed alone. He paused. I made peace with it, eventually. Told myself that some wolves simply weren't meant for that kind of love. That my purpose was the pack, and the pack was enough. And then I fell from the sky. And then you fell from the sky, Rowan agreed, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Glowing and imperious and absolutely furious about the whole situation. Celine laughed despite herself. I was not imperious. You told me my bond was malfunctioning. Within 30 seconds of meeting me. I was stressed. You were magnificent. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Rowan's eyes traced her face, her glowing skin, her starlight hair, the celestial fire that lived behind her eyes. You are magnificent, Celine. Bond or no bond. Emperor or no emperor. Whatever happens tomorrow, or the day after, or 1,000 years from now, I need you to know that. Celine's throat tightened. Rowan, you don't have to say anything. He looked away, back at the stream. I just needed you to hear it. Once. From someone who means it. They sat in silence after that, the forest breathing around them, the moons watching from above. And Celine found herself leaning slightly into his warmth, closing the distance between their shoulders until they touched, a small rebellion against the voice in her head that whispered she should not want this. Should not want him. He did not move away. Did not push for more. Simply sat beside her in the moonlight, solid and patient and present, asking nothing. Offering everything. Here's a question for you. Have you ever felt pulled between two paths, knowing neither was entirely wrong, but still unable to choose? What did you do? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And somewhere far above, beyond the twin moons, beyond the veil of reality itself, the Astral Emperor opened a rift between worlds. He was done waiting. The sky tore open at midnight. Celine felt it before she saw it, a wrenching sensation in her chest, the astral threads suddenly blazing white-hot, pulling her toward the window of her tower room with a force that nearly buckled her knees. She reached the window just in time to watch reality unravel. A rift split the darkness above the forest, edges burning with silver fire, and through it poured light, not the gentle glow of stars, but the concentrated radiance of 1,000 suns compressed into a single point. The wolves below howled in alarm. The ancient wards surrounding the stronghold flickered and strained. And from the heart of that impossible brightness, a figure emerged. The Astral Emperor descended like a god returning to claim his due. His silver-white hair streamed behind him, caught in cosmic winds that did not exist in this realm. His armor, dark as the void between stars, embedded with constellations that shifted and pulsed with living light, gleamed with an otherworldly sheen. A cloak of pure night billowed from his shoulders, its edges dissolving into stardust where they met the mortal air. But it was his face that stole Celine's breath. Beautiful. Terrifyingly beautiful. Cheekbones sharp enough to cut through dimensions, lips carved by a sculptor who had never known imperfection, and eyes, those ancient, knowing eyes, that found her window across the chaos below with unerring precision. The thread between them sang. Celine, it seemed to whisper. Finally. 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 She gripped the windowsill hard enough to crack the stone. Kale landed in the courtyard with impossible grace, his boots touching the ground without sound. Wolves surrounded him instantly, snarling, bristling, teeth bared, but he did not spare them a glance. His attention remained fixed on her tower, on the window where she stood frozen, on the woman who had run from him across the breadth of creation. Celine. His voice carried despite the distance, resonant and deep, wrapping around her name like a caress. Come down. It was not a command. Not quite. But the thread pulsed with his desire, his longing, his bone-deep certainty that she belonged at his side, and Celine felt her feet move toward the door before her mind had agreed to the journey. She stopped herself at the threshold, hands shaking. No, she would not be summoned like a servant. She would not float down to him because the bond demanded it. If they were going to have this conversation, this confrontation, it would be on her terms. She descended the stairs with deliberate slowness, each step a small act of rebellion. By the time she emerged into the courtyard, the situation had evolved. Rowan stood between her and Kale, still shirtless. He must have shifted from wolf form moments ago, his body coiled with barely restrained violence. A dozen of his strongest wolves flanked him, their growls a constant undercurrent of threat. The air crackled with tension thick enough to choke on. And Kale simply waited. His ancient eyes tracked her approach with the patience of someone who had learned to measure time in millennia. There was no anger in his expression, no frustration, only a vast, aching relief that made Celine's chest constrict painfully. "My bride," he said softly as she drew near. "I have searched so long." "For days," Celine replied, stopping a careful distance away. "I've been gone 4 days. 4 days without the light of your presence. 4 days of silence where your voice should be. 4 days of—" He paused, something flickering across his perfect features. It felt longer. Despite everything, Celine almost smiled. "Almost. You dragged your moons across the cosmos. I saw them the moment I landed. I needed you to know I was coming. I did not want you to fear. You didn't want me to run again." Kale tilted his head, conceding the point. "That as well." Rowan stepped forward, placing himself more firmly between them. "She doesn't want to go with you." The Emperor's gaze shifted to the Wolf King, and something cold entered those ancient eyes. "You presume to speak for her?" "I presume to protect her." "From me?" Kale's voice dropped to something dangerous, soft and sharp as a blade wrapped in silk. "I am her bondmate. Her soul is tethered to mine across the fabric of existence. I have waited 10,000 years for her. What are you but a momentary distraction? A mortal creature whose entire lifespan amounts to less than a breath in my memory." Rowan didn't flinch. "I'm the man who offered her shelter when she needed to escape." "Who are you but the reason she needed to escape in the first place?" Silence. Kale's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted, a pressure building, the promise of violence humming at frequencies too low for mortal ears. The wolves surrounding them whimpered and pressed lower to the ground. Even Rowan's jaw tightened, though he held his position. "Enough." Celine's voice cut through the tension like a blade. She stepped around Rowan, ignoring his sound of protest, and faced the Emperor directly. "You came all this way, Kale. You tore open reality to find me. So talk. Tell me why I should return with you." Something shifted in Kale's eyes, surprise, perhaps, that she was engaging rather than running. "Because you are mine," he said simply. "Because the astral thread bound us together during your coronation. Because I have spent every moment since that day preparing a life for us, a palace where you will want for nothing, a court that will worship you, an eternity of devotion at your feet." "I don't want worship." "Then tell me what you want. I will give it to you. Anything. Everything." "What I want," Celine said carefully, "is to not have been bound to you without my consent. What I want is to have been asked before my soul was stitched to a stranger's. What I want," her voice cracked, and she forced it steady. "What I want is impossible, Kale. Because no matter how many palaces you build or courts you rearrange, you cannot undo what was done. You cannot give me back the choice that was taken." Kale was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had lost some of its imperial certainty. "The binding was an accident," he said. "The energies of your coronation tangled with my presence in the astral plane. I did not orchestrate it. I did not even know it was possible until it happened." "I know. Then why do you blame me?" "Because you were happy about it." The words tore from her throat, raw and ragged. "Because when they told you that a princess you had never met was now permanently soul-bound to you, your response was not horror or regret or any attempt to find a way to undo it. Your response was to appear at my coronation within hours and announce me as your bride to the entire celestial court." Kale's perfect composure flickered. I thought you would be pleased. To be bound to an emperor. To have your future secured, your position elevated. My position. Celine laughed, and it was a broken sound. Yes, my position. That is exactly the problem, Kale. You saw the bond as an elevation. A gift. A cosmic blessing that granted you the companion you had craved for 10,000 years. But you never once asked if I saw it the same way. Celine. You never asked if I wanted to be your companion. Never asked if I was ready for eternity. Never asked. She pressed her palms to her eyes, fighting for control. You are not a cruel man. I know this. I can feel it through the thread. But you are so accustomed to being obeyed, so certain that your desires align with the natural order of the universe, that it never occurred to you that I might have desires of my own. The courtyard was silent. Even the wolves had stopped growling, watching this confrontation with wary eyes. Kale stood very still, his ancient face unreadable. You are right. Celine lowered her hands, startled. What? You are right. The words seemed to cost him something, a visible crack in the imperial facade, a glimpse of the lonely, desperate creature beneath the armor. I have ruled alone for so long, made decisions for galaxies, for civilizations, for forces beyond mortal comprehension. When the thread bound us, I felt joy. For the first time in millennia, I felt something other than the cold weight of duty. He paused, his voice dropping. I did not stop to consider that my joy might be your cage. Celine stared at him, uncertain how to respond to this unexpected vulnerability. I am not accustomed to asking, Kale continued quietly. Not accustomed to waiting. Not accustomed to the possibility that what I want might not be what is right. His eyes met hers, those ancient, fathomless eyes, and she saw something in them that looked almost like shame. But I am capable of learning. If you will teach me. Teach you. How to be less. He gestured vaguely at himself, at the cosmic power radiating from his every pore. How to be what you need instead of what I am. It was, Celine realized, the closest thing to an apology she had ever heard from a being of his magnitude. And some part of her, some treacherous, exhausted part that remembered the shape of his loneliness through the thread, wanted to accept it. But then Rowan spoke. Pretty words, the Wolf King said, his voice hard. But words are easy. You say you want to learn, to change, to be less. But you're still standing in my territory uninvited, surrounded by an army of celestial guards, with your moons hanging in our sky like a threat. He stepped forward, positioning himself beside Celine rather than in front of her. If you truly want to be what she needs, then prove it. Leave. Give her time to decide without your presence looming over her. Kale's jaw tightened. You would have me abandon my bondmate to a rival? I would have you treat her like a person instead of a possession. The two men stared at each other, the Eternal Emperor and the Mortal King, and Celine felt the weight of their conflict pressing down on her like a physical force. This was the moment. She could feel it. Whatever she said next would determine the shape of her future. Both of you, she said quietly, believe you know what's best for me. Both of you want to protect me, claim me, keep me. But neither of you has asked me what I want. Rowan turned to her, his expression shifting to something careful. Then tell us. Celine took a breath. I want time. Real time. Not the borrowed moments I've stolen by running. I want to understand what I feel for both of you, without the pressure of bonds and duties and cosmic expectations. She looked at Kale. I am not asking you to sever the thread. I know that's impossible. But I am asking you to give me space to breathe. To discover who I am when I'm not being pulled in 1,000 directions. Kale's face was unreadable. And if, at the end of this time, you choose him, the word dripped with disdain. Then you will have to accept it. I am an emperor. I do not. You said you were capable of learning. Celine held his gaze, refusing to look away. Prove it. The silence stretched. The moons above seemed to pulse with tension. The wolves held their breath. And then, slowly, impossibly, the Astral Emperor inclined his head. Very well, he said, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. I will return to my realm. I will give you time. The word seemed to physically pain him. But I will not remove the moons. I will not sever the thread. And I will not stop hoping. I wouldn't expect you to. Kale stepped closer, and Celine forced herself to hold her ground even as the thread blazed with his proximity. He raised one hand slowly, giving her time to retreat, and brushed his fingers against her cheek with a tenderness that seemed impossible for a being of such power. "I have waited 10,000 years," he murmured, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. "I can wait a little longer. But know this, Celine, when you are ready, when you have found the answers you seek, I will be there. Across any distance, through any darkness, I will always come for you." His touch lingered for a moment longer, warm despite the coldness of space that clung to him, gentle despite the strength that could shatter worlds. Then he stepped back, and the loss of contact left her strangely bereft. "Until we meet again, my bride." He turned, his cloak swirling like captured night, and walked toward the rift that still hung open in the sky. His celestial guards fell into formation behind him. The cosmic light intensified, preparing to receive its emperor. At the threshold of the rift, Kale paused. He did not look back, but his voice carried clearly across the courtyard. "Wolf King." Rowan tensed. "Emperor. Protect her, or I will unmake your entire bloodline." Then he was gone, stepping through the rift, disappearing into the light, leaving nothing behind but the fading echo of his presence and the twin moons that still watched from above. Celine released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Well," Rowan said after a long moment, "that was dramatic." A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep in Celine's chest, slightly hysterical, edged with relief, but real. "He does not do anything by halves. Clearly." Rowan turned to face her, his whiskey eyes searching her face. "Are you all right?" Celine considered the question. The thread in her chest still pulsed with Kale's presence, fainter now but constant. The mate bond with Rowan hummed alongside it, warm and patient. She was standing in a foreign realm, torn between two impossible men, with no clear path forward. But for the first time in her existence, she had demanded time. And for the first time, someone had given it to her. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I think I might be. Eventually." Rowan nodded slowly. Then, with the same careful restraint he had shown since the moment they met, he extended his hand, palm up, an invitation rather than a demand. "Come inside," he said. "It's cold. And I think we both need a drink." Celine looked at his hand, calloused, scarred, warm with mortal life. She took it. And as they walked back toward the fortress together, fingers intertwined, Celine allowed herself to imagine, just for a moment, what it might feel like to choose. The weeks that followed were the strangest of Celine's immortal life. Strange because they were quiet. Strange because no one demanded anything of her. Strange because, for the first time in her existence, she woke each morning without a schedule dictated by advisors, without ceremonies requiring her presence, without the weight of cosmic expectation pressing down on her shoulders like a burial shroud. She was impossibly free. Or as free as someone could be with two soul bonds pulsing in her chest and twin moons watching her every move. Rowan kept his promise. He did not push, did not hover, did not treat their intertwined fingers that first night as permission for anything more. Instead, he simply included her. In his life. In his pack. In the daily rhythms of a world she had never known existed. She learned to wake with the sun instead of the stars. Learned the names of the wolves who guarded the stronghold, stern Matilda who ran the kitchens, young Finn who could not quite control his shifts yet, ancient grandmother wolf who had seen 6 alpha rains and had opinions about all of them. She learned to eat food that required chewing rather than celestial delicacies that dissolved on the tongue. Learned to walk without floating, to speak without her voice resonating through multiple dimensions, to exist in a single body in a single moment without feeling like she was wasting time. It was terrifying. It was wonderful. And through it all, Rowan watched her with those patient whiskey eyes, never asking for more than she offered, never taking more than she gave. "You're staring again," Celine said one afternoon, not looking up from the herb she was attempting to identify. She had taken to helping in the healing halls, something to do with her hands, something useful that didn't require celestial power. "You have dirt on your nose." Rowan replied from his position in the doorway. Celine swiped at her face, probably making it worse. Better. Worse, actually. It's rather endearing. She shot him a glare that would have incinerated a lesser man. Rowan simply smiled, that slow, warm smile that did unfortunate things to her composure, and pushed off from the doorframe. Walk with me. It had become their ritual. Every afternoon, when the sun hung low and golden over the mountains, they walked. Sometimes through the forest, sometimes along the ramparts, sometimes simply around the training yard while wolves sparred and shouted around them. They talked about everything and nothing, his centuries of leadership, her stifled childhood, the philosophical implications of fate versus choice, the correct way to season venison, a subject on which they violently disagreed. Today, Rowan led her somewhere new. The path wound up the mountainside, steep and narrow, until they emerged onto a ledge overlooking the entire valley. The stronghold sprawled below, smoke rising from chimneys, wolves moving like ants through the courtyards. Beyond it, the forest stretched to the horizon, a sea of green and gold touched by the dying light. My thinking place, Rowan said, settling onto a flat rock near the edge. When the weight of leadership gets too heavy, I come here. Remind myself why I carry it. Celine sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. The mate bond hummed contentedly at his proximity, and she had stopped fighting it weeks ago. Fighting it was exhausting. Accepting its presence, without letting it dictate her choices, was easier. It's beautiful, she said. So are you. The words were simple, unadorned, delivered without any attempt at seduction. Rowan wasn't even looking at her. His gaze was fixed on the valley below, his profile sharp against the sunset sky. You shouldn't say things like that, Celine murmured. Why not? Because I don't know what I'm doing. Because I might still leave. Because you're afraid it might mean something? She fell silent. Rowan finally turned to look at her, and the weight of his attention made her breath catch. I know the situation we're in, Celine. I know you have another bondmate waiting across the stars, probably counting the days until he can return. I know that everything between us might amount to nothing in the end. He paused, something fierce flickering in his eyes. But I refuse to waste whatever time we have by pretending I don't feel what I feel. And what do you feel? The question escaped before she could stop it, too vulnerable, too raw, too much like an invitation she wasn't sure she was ready to extend. Rowan held her gaze. Slowly, deliberately, he reached out and took her hand, turning it over so her palm faced upward. His thumb traced the lines there, the heart line, the lifeline, the fate line that celestial seers claimed could predict the trajectory of her entire existence. I feel like I spent 200 years walking through darkness, he said quietly, and then you fell from the sky and set everything on fire. His thumb continued its gentle path across her palm, and Celine shivered despite the warmth of the evening. I feel like every moment I spend with you is a gift I don't deserve. I feel like I would fight the stars themselves to keep you safe, even knowing the stars would win. Rowan. And I feel, he continued, his voice dropping to something rough and honest, like if you asked me to let you go tomorrow, I would. Because your happiness matters more to me than my own. Because that's what love is supposed to be. The word hung between them, love, heavy and terrifying and impossibly precious. You love me, Celine whispered. Rowan's smile was crooked, self-deprecating, beautiful. I think I loved you the moment you told me my bond was malfunctioning. You were covered in stardust and fury, and you looked at me like I was an inconvenience rather than a king. He laughed softly. No one had ever looked at me like that. I found it refreshing. You're impossible. So I've been told. Celine stared at their joined hands, his scarred and calloused, hers still faintly luminescent despite her best efforts to appear mortal. Two hands that should never have found each other. Two souls connected by a bond that shouldn't exist. I don't know if I love you, she said honestly. I don't know if I'm capable of it. My entire life, love has been something other people decided for me. Something transactional. Something that came with contracts and obligations and the weight of empires. She took a shaky breath. But when I'm with you, I feel like myself. Not a princess. Not a bride. Not a pawn in cosmic chess. Just Celine. Rowan lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm, soft, reverent, asking nothing in return. "That's enough," he said against her skin. "That's more than enough." They sat together as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. Celine leaned into his warmth, and Rowan wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and for a perfect, crystalline moment, the future didn't matter. Only this. Only them. Only the choice she was slowly, terrifyingly, beginning to make. The attack came 3 nights later. Celine woke to screaming. She was on her feet before her mind caught up with her body, celestial power flaring instinctively as she rushed to the window. The courtyard below was chaos, wolves in both forms fighting against shadows that moved wrong, that bent light around themselves, that struck with claws made of darkness. Shadow wraiths. Creatures from the void between dimensions. Creatures that should not exist in the mortal realm. Creatures that could only be here if someone had brought them. Celine's blood ran cold. She didn't bother with the stairs. She jumped from her window, celestial energy cushioning her landing, and hit the ground running. Around her, wolves fell, not dead, but weakened, their life force draining into the wraiths with every strike. She could see Rowan at the center of the battle, still in human form, dual swords flashing as he carved through shadows that reformed almost as quickly as he destroyed them. "Celine." He spotted her across the chaos, relief and terror warring in his eyes. "Get back inside. These things. I know what they are." She raised her hands, violet light blazing to life around her fingers. "And I know how to stop them." The wraiths turned toward her as one, sensing her celestial energy like predators scenting prey. They abandoned the wolves and surged in her direction, a wave of darkness and hunger and wrongness that made her skin crawl. Celine stood her ground. She pulled on the power she had spent weeks suppressing, the cosmic fire that lived in her atoms, the starlight that flowed through her veins. It hurt, using this much energy after so long felt like flexing a muscle that had atrophied, but she pushed through the pain and let the light explode outward. The courtyard flooded with brilliance. The wraith screamed, a sound that existed in frequencies beyond mortal hearing, that clawed at the edges of sanity and dissolved. One by one, they came apart, their shadow forms unable to withstand the concentrated light of a celestial princess. Within moments, it was over. Celine stood in the center of the courtyard, breathing hard, her glow slowly fading. The wolves around her were stirring, confused but alive. Rowan was running toward her, his sword still dripping with shadow ichor. "Are you hurt?" He reached her, hands cupping her face, eyes frantically scanning for injury. "Celine, are you?" "I'm fine." She caught his wrists, steadying him. "I'm fine. But those wraiths, they didn't come here by accident." Rowan's expression darkened. "Someone sent them. Someone who wanted to test me. Or flush me out. Or..." A slow clap echoed across the courtyard. They both spun toward the sound. A figure emerged from the shadows near the gate, a woman, tall and elegant, with silver hair that fell to her waist and eyes that glowed an unsettling shade of violet. She wore armor of black crystal, and her smile was the kind of smile that preceded assassinations and betrayals and the toppling of empires. "Impressive," the woman said, still clapping. "Truly impressive. The little princess has claws after all." Celine's stomach dropped. She knew that face, knew that voice, knew the cold calculation behind those glowing eyes. "Valeth," she breathed. Rowan glanced at her. "You know her?" "She's my aunt." Celine's voice came out hollow. "The Empress Dowager of the Celestial Realm. My mother's sister." She swallowed hard. "And the woman who was supposed to be bound to Kale before the thread chose me instead." Valetha's smile widened. "Hello, little niece. We have so much to discuss." Valeth moved through the courtyard like she owned it, her crystalline armor catching the torchlight, her silver hair swaying with each deliberate step. The wolves who had begun to recover from the wraith attack shrank back at her approach, instinct warning them of a predator far beyond their ability to fight. Celine stepped forward, placing herself between her aunt and Rowan. "What are you doing here, Valeth? Can an aunt not visit her favorite niece?" Vailitha's smile didn't reach her eyes. It never had. Especially when said niece has caused such disruption across the realms. You sent the wraiths. I needed to see what you were capable of. Whether the power that should have been mine had manifested properly in your fragile little form. Vailith stopped a few paces away, her violet eyes raking over Celine with cold assessment. I must admit, I'm impressed. You've grown stronger than I anticipated. Rowan moved to Celine's side, his sword still drawn. Someone want to explain what's happening? Allow me. Vailitha's attention shifted to him, and her smile turned predatory. The Wolf King. How quaint. You've been keeping my niece entertained during her little rebellion. She tilted her head. I wonder, does he know the truth, Celine? Does he know why the astral thread bound you to Kale instead of me? Celine's blood turned to ice. Vailith. Does he know it wasn't an accident at all? The words landed like a physical blow. Celine felt Rowan's gaze on her, questioning, but she couldn't look at him. Couldn't look away from her aunt's triumphant expression. What do you mean? Rowan demanded. Celine said the binding was accidental. A tangle of energies during her coronation. That's what she was told. Vailith laughed, a cold, brittle sound. That's what everyone was told. But I was there, Wolf King. I was standing in the astral plane when the thread reached out to claim its target. And I watched. Her voice hardened. I watched as my own mother redirected it. Pulled it away from me. Wrapped it around her precious younger daughter's child instead. Celine's world tilted. That's not. Grandmother wouldn't. Wouldn't she? Vailith stepped closer, her eyes blazing. I was the one who was supposed to be bound to the Emperor. I had spent centuries preparing for it. I had studied the rituals, aligned my energy with the astral frequencies, done everything required to ensure the thread would choose me. And it did choose me for one glorious moment. I felt it reaching for my soul. She paused, her expression twisting with old rage. And then your grandmother intervened. The High Oracle herself, using her power to redirect cosmic forces because she decided her favorite grandchild deserved the honor more than her disappointing older granddaughter. Vailitha's voice cracked. She stole my destiny, Celine. She stole my future. And she gave it to a girl who didn't even want it. Celine shook her head slowly, trying to process this revelation. Even if that's true, even if grandmother did redirect the thread, why are you here? Why now? Because I found a way to take back what's mine. Vailith raised her hand, and darkness gathered around her fingers, not the shadows of the wraiths, but something deeper, older, a void that seemed to drink the light from the air. The astral thread can be transferred, she said softly. It requires a specific ritual. A cosmic alignment that occurs once every 1,000 years. Her smile returned, sharp as a blade. That alignment happens tonight. And with your cooperation, willing or otherwise, I will finally claim the bond that should have been mine. You're insane. Rowan stepped forward, swords raised. You can't just steal someone's soul bond. I don't intend to steal it. Vailitha's eyes never left Celine. I intend to have it given to me. Celine will renounce her claim to the thread, and it will pass to me as the next eligible vessel. She paused. Or I will kill everyone in this stronghold and take it from her corpse. The ritual works either way. It's simply Messier with a dead donor. The wolves around them growled, shifting into combat stances, but Celine could see the fear in their eyes. They had barely survived the wraiths. Vailith was something else entirely, a celestial being of immense power, driven by centuries of resentment and rage. You would murder an entire pack for a bond? Celine asked quietly. I would burn entire realms for what was taken from me. Vailitha's voice held no hesitation. You have no idea what it was like, little niece. To watch you stumble through your coronation, confused and overwhelmed, while the thread that should have been wrapped around my soul settled into yours instead. To watch the Emperor, my Emperor, look at you with the devotion I had spent centuries earning. He was never yours. He would have been. Vailitha's composure cracked, something raw and wounded bleeding through. I loved him, Celine. Not because of power or politics or cosmic duty. I loved him for 10,000 years from afar, watching him rule alone, dreaming of the day I would finally stand beside him. And your grandmother took that from me because she thought you were special. For a moment, Just a moment, Celine felt something like sympathy. She knew what it was like to have choices made for her. Knew the suffocating weight of destiny imposed rather than chosen. But then Velith's expression hardened again, and whatever vulnerability had shown through disappeared behind walls of ice. Enough talking. She raised both hands, dark energy swirling around them. Make your choice, niece. Surrender the thread willingly and watch your Wolf King survive the night. Or resist, and I will tear this stronghold apart stone by stone until nothing remains but ash and memory. Celine's mind raced. She could feel the thread in her chest, pulsing with awareness of Kale across the cosmos. Could feel the mate bond beside it, warm with Rowan's presence. 2 connections. 2 men. 2 possible futures. And now a third option. Surrender everything and let Velith have the destiny she believed she deserved. If I give you the thread, Celine said slowly, what happens to me? You become mortal. Fully, completely mortal. Your celestial power will fade. Your lifespan will shrink to a human span. Velith shrugged. You'd probably live another 60, 70 years. Enough time to play house with your Wolf King before age claims you. Rowan grabbed Celine's arm, spinning her to face him. No, absolutely not. You are not sacrificing yourself for. It's my choice. The words came out harder than she intended. Isn't that what we've been talking about all this time? Choice. Agency. The right to decide my own future. She looked at him, really looked, memorizing the angles of his face, the desperate fear in his whiskey eyes. Maybe this is my choice. Celine. I never wanted the thread. I never wanted to be bound to an emperor I didn't choose. I never wanted any of this. Her voice cracked. Maybe giving it up is the first real decision I've ever made. And what about us? Rowan's grip tightened on her arm, his voice raw. What about the mate bond? What about everything we? The mate bond stays. That one is yours. She pressed her palm to his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath her touch. That one I might have chosen if I'd ever been given the chance. Might have. Would have. The admission tore free before she could stop it. Would have chosen Rowan. Would choose now if I thought we had a future that didn't end with my aunt burning everything we loved to the ground. Rowan stared at her, something breaking and rebuilding in his eyes. Then he pulled her close, crushing her against his chest, his breath hot against her hair. I won't let you do this, he whispered. I won't let you give up everything you are for me. It's not just for you. It's for me. It's for... The thread in her chest blazed white-hot. Celine gasped, jerking back from Rowan's embrace as the bond exploded with sensation. She knew that feeling. Knew it in her bones, her blood, her very atoms. Kale was coming. No, Velith snarled, her composure shattering. No, 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 the alignment isn't complete yet. He shouldn't be able to. The sky split open. Not gently this time, not the controlled rift of an emperor making an entrance. This was violent, desperate, a wound torn in reality by sheer force of will. Light poured through, blinding, furious, the concentrated radiance of a being pushed beyond the limits of patience. The Astral Emperor descended like a falling star. He hit the ground in the center of the courtyard, and the impact sent shockwaves rippling outward, knocking wolves off their feet, cracking stone, extinguishing every torch within 100 paces. When the dust cleared, Kale stood in a crater of his own making, his silver hair wild, his armor cracked in places, his ancient eyes burning with something Celine had never seen before. Rage. Pure, cosmic, world-ending rage. Velith. His voice resonated through multiple dimensions, making the air itself vibrate. You dare. Velith stumbled back, her confident facade crumbling. Kale, Emperor, I can explain. You sent wraiths to attack my bondmate. You threatened her life. You attempted to steal a thread that the cosmos itself ordained. Kale advanced on her, each step deliberate, his power building around him like a gathering storm. You have committed crimes against the celestial order. Crimes against my realm. Crimes against me. The thread was supposed to be mine. Velith's voice rose to a shriek. Your mother promised it to me. The alignment was calculated, the rituals prepared, I did everything right. And then her grandmother. The thread chose Celine. Kale's voice cut through her hysteria like a blade. Not because of manipulation or politics or the machinations of oracles. Because the cosmic forces that govern our existence recognized something in her soul that resonated with mine. He paused, something almost like wonder softening his rage. She was always meant to be my match, Bailiff. The only accident was that it took so long for us to find each other. You're lying. I am many things. Kale stopped directly in front of her, towering over her trembling form. But I have never been a liar. He raised his hand, and Celine saw Vailith's fate written in the gathering starlight around his fingers. Death. Annihilation. The complete erasure of a being who had dared threaten what belonged to him. Kale, wait. The words left Celine's mouth before she consciously chose them. She stepped forward, past Rowan's restraining hand, past the cowering wolves, until she stood beside the Emperor with her aunt's terrified face inches away. Kale's hand remained raised, but his eyes shifted to her. She tried to kill you. She tried to take something she thought was stolen from her. Celine met Vailith's gaze, saw the fear there, yes, but beneath it, the same desperate loneliness she had felt in Kale through the thread. The same hunger for connection. The same ache for something that had always seemed just out of reach. She was wrong. What she did was unforgivable. But I understand why she did it. Understanding does not require mercy. No, but I'm asking for it anyway. Celine reached out and gently lowered Kale's arm. The starlight around his fingers faded reluctantly. Not for her sake. For mine. Because I don't want to build whatever future we might have on the foundation of my aunt's ashes. Kale was silent for a long moment, his ancient eyes searching her face. Then, slowly, he exhaled. You continue to surprise me, Celine. Is that a yes? It is a deferral to your judgment. He turned back to Vailith, his expression hardening. You will be exiled to the void between dimensions. No celestial realm will offer you harbor. No mortal world will know your presence. You will exist in the spaces between existence alone until the cosmos itself forgets your name. Vailith's face went pale. That's worse than death. Yes. Kale's voice held no sympathy. It is. Consider it mercy. He raised his hand again, and this time the light that gathered was not destructive, but binding, chains of starlight wrapping around Vailith's form, pulling her toward a rift that opened behind her, a tear in reality that led to nothing but endless, empty gray. Celine. Vailith struggled against the chains, her eyes wild. Celine, please, you don't understand the loneliness. I couldn't bear it. Neither could he. Celine's voice was quiet, but firm. The difference is, he never tried to destroy anyone because of it. The chains tightened. The rift widened. And with a final, desperate scream, Vailith was pulled through, vanishing into the void, leaving nothing behind but the echo of her rage and the fading whisper of her name. The rift sealed behind her. Silence fell over the courtyard. Celine stood between two men, the Emperor who had crossed the cosmos to find her, and the Wolf King who had offered her shelter without asking anything in return. The thread pulsed in her chest. The mate bond hummed beside it. Two connections. Two possibilities. Two versions of forever. Well, Rowan said finally, his voice rough. That was something. Kale turned to face him, and for a moment, the two men simply stared at each other, the Eternal Emperor and the Mortal King, rivals for the heart of a woman who had never asked to be fought over. You protected her, Kale said slowly. When she needed protection. You gave her shelter when she needed shelter. You offered her choice when she had never known what choice meant. Rowan's jaw tightened. I did what anyone would do. No. You did what I should have done. Kale's voice carried something that might have been respect. Might have been gratitude. Might have been the first stirrings of understanding from a being who had never had to consider anyone else's perspective. I came to claim her. You came to free her. One of us was right. And which one was that? Kale didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Celine, and the weight of 10,000 years lived in his eyes. I felt it, he said quietly. Through the thread. When you considered giving it up. Surrendering it to Vailith. Becoming mortal to save the wolves. He paused. You would have done it. Yes. Why? Celine took a breath. Because for the first time in my life, I had something worth sacrificing for. Not duty. Not destiny. Not the weight of cosmic expectation. Just people. A place. A possibility of happiness that didn't come with chains attached. Kale was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, younger somehow, as if the Emperor had stepped aside and left only the man beneath. I have waited 10,000 years for a companion, he said. I have built palaces and conquered kingdoms and rearranged the very stars in search of something to fill the void inside me. And when the thread finally gave me what I had craved for millennia, I was so desperate to keep it that I never stopped to ask if it wanted to be kept. He reached out, slowly, carefully, and took Celine's hand. Not possessively. Not demandingly. Just held it like something precious he was afraid to break. I cannot undo what was done, Kale continued. Cannot sever the thread, cannot give you back the choice that was taken. But I can give you this, my word, as Emperor of the Astral Realm, that I will never again demand you come to me. Never again assume that the bond gives me rights over your heart. His thumb traced her knuckles, gentle as starlight. If you choose to stand beside me, it will be because you want to. Not because the cosmos commands it. Celine stared at him, this ancient being who was learning, in real time, how to be something other than what he had always been. And if I don't choose you, she asked softly. If I choose something else? Kale's expression flickered with pain, but he did not look away. Then I will let you go. It will break me, but I will let you go. The courtyard held its breath. Celine looked at Kale, at his ancient eyes and terrible power, and the loneliness that had shaped him for 10 millennia. She looked at Rowan, at his patient warmth and scarred hands, and the love he offered without conditions. 2 men. 2 bonds. 2 versions of forever. And finally, the choice was hers. She released Kale's hand and stepped back, positioning herself between them so she could see them both. The twin moons hung overhead, watching. The wolves watched. The whole of creation seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what the celestial princess would decide. I spent my entire existence being told who I was supposed to be, Celine said slowly. Celestial princess. Cosmic bride. Political pawn. Every role came with expectations I never chose and chains I never wanted. She looked at Rowan. And then I fell from the sky and found someone who looked at me like I was just me. Not a title. Not a destiny. Just Celine. Rowan's expression cracked with hope and terror. But I also found something else. She turned to Kale. I found someone capable of change. Someone who had spent 10,000 years certain of his own rightness and who, when confronted with the harm that certainty had caused, chose to grow instead of defend. Kale stood very still, barely breathing. I don't know what love is, Celine admitted. I've never been allowed to learn. But I know what I feel when I'm with each of you. With Rowan, I feel safe. Warm. Human in a way I never knew I wanted to be. She paused. With Kale, I feel understood. Seen in my entirety, not just the light, but the vastness, the strangeness, the parts of me that could never fit into a mortal life no matter how much I might want them to. She took a breath. I don't want to choose between you. I don't think I can. The mate bond is real, I feel it every time Rowan walks into a room. The astral thread is real, I feel it every time Kale's heart beats across the cosmos. She pressed her hand to her chest, where both connections pulsed in tandem. But I also know that I cannot belong to both of you. Cannot split myself between 2 worlds, 2 futures, 2 versions of forever. Then what do you want? Rowan asked, his voice rough. Celine smiled, a small, sad, beautiful thing. I want to stop being something that other people claim. I want to stop being a prize to be won or a destiny to be fulfilled. I want, her voice cracked. I want to choose for myself. Not because the bond demands it. Not because the cosmos requires it. Because my heart, for once, gets to decide. She stepped toward Kale. His breath caught. She took his hand again, but this time, she didn't just hold it. She lifted it to her chest, pressing his palm flat against the place where the thread burned brightest. I feel you, she said quietly. Every moment of every day. I feel your loneliness and your longing and your desperate, aching hope that someone might finally see you as more than a throne. She held his gaze. I see you, Kale. The man beneath the emperor. The heart beneath the armor. Then she turned, still holding Kale's hand, and extended her other hand to Rowan. The Wolf King stared at her, confusion and hope warring in his eyes. But he took her hand, his callous fingers wrapping around hers like he was afraid she might disappear. Selene drew him closer until the three of them stood in a triangle, emperor and king, and the woman who connected them. I spent weeks trying to figure out what I wanted, she said. Trying to separate what the bonds wanted from what I wanted. And I finally realized they're the same thing. What do you mean? Rowan asked. I mean that the bonds didn't create my feelings. They amplified them. She squeezed both their hands. The thread didn't make me capable of understanding Kale, it just made me aware that I could. The mate bond didn't make me want Rowan's warmth, it just showed me what I'd been missing my entire life. She looked at Kale. I choose you. Not because of the thread. Because of the man who crossed the cosmos when he felt me in danger. Because of the emperor who is learning to ask instead of demand. Because of the possibility that 10,000 years of loneliness might finally end with something that feels like partnership instead of possession. Kale's expression shattered and reformed into something raw, vulnerable, impossibly hopeful. Then she looked at Rowan. And I choose to honor what you gave me. The shelter. The patience. The first taste of what it feels like to be wanted without being owned. Her voice softened. The mate bond will always exist between us. I can't change that. But I need you to know what I feel for you is real. It will always be real. And if circumstances were different, they're not. Rowan's voice was rough, but his eyes were gentle. I know. I'm sorry. Don't be. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles, the mirror of the gesture she had grown to treasure. You're choosing with your whole heart. That's all I ever wanted for you. He smiled, crooked and bittersweet. Even if it means losing you. You're not losing me. You're setting you free. He released her hand slowly, deliberately, and stepped back. Go. Be happy. Rule galaxies with your eternal emperor. His smile widened, though something in his eyes would never fully heal. And if he ever makes you cry, I will personally rip his throne from the astral plane and beat him with it. Kale made a sound that might have been a laugh. Noted. Selene stood between them, the man she was leaving and the man she was choosing, and felt her heart crack and heal in the same moment. This was what choice felt like. Not painless. Not easy. But real. Authentic. Hers. She stepped toward Kale, and he caught her, his arms wrapping around her with a tenderness that seemed impossible for a being of such power. Thank you, he murmured against her hair. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for learning how to be chosen. She looked back at Rowan one last time, at the Wolf King who had taught her what it meant to be wanted, who had offered her shelter and patience and love without conditions. Rule well, she said softly. Always. He bowed his head. Your Majesty. Kale raised his hand, and a rift opened beside them, not violent this time, but gentle, a doorway to the stars. Light spilled through, warm and welcoming, carrying the scent of nebulae and the whisper of cosmic winds. Selene took one last breath of mortal air. Then she stepped through the rift, hand in hand with the Emperor who had waited 10,000 years for her. The light embraced her. The cosmos sang. And Selene, celestial princess, cosmic bride, woman who had finally chosen her own fate, went home. Behind her, the rift sealed, leaving Rowan standing alone in the courtyard beneath twin moons that slowly, quietly, began to fade. He watched them disappear, those celestial markers that had hung in his sky for weeks, constant reminders of the woman who had fallen into his life and changed everything. Goodbye, Selene, he whispered. The wind carried his words away. And somewhere across the cosmos, on a throne of crystallized starlight in a palace that floated among the stars, a princess looked up at the void between dimensions and smiled. She was not a possession. She was not a prize. She was not a destiny fulfilled. She was Selene, a woman who had chosen, at last, to be exactly who she wanted to be. And that, she thought as Kale's hand found hers, was the only kind of happily ever after worth having. The end.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out.